On March 23rd, 1996, Whitney Houston and Tupac Shakur were alone in a studio for 8 hours. The music they made was revolutionary, but what almost happened between them, the moment they stopped themselves, haunted both of them until their deaths. If you're loving this untold story, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below about which legendary collaboration story you want to hear next. It was the 1994 MTV Video Music Awards. Whitney Houston stood in the backstage hallway, Bobby Brown's arm wrapped possessively around her waist. She was wearing a sequined gown that cost more than most people's cars, her makeup flawless, her smile perfect for the cameras. But her eyes told a different story. Tupac Shakur walked past, heading to his dressing room. Their eyes met for exactly 3 seconds. In those 3 seconds, something electric passed between them, something neither could name, something dangerous. "You were looking at that thug," Bobby hissed in the limo 20 minutes later, his grip tightening on Whitney's arm. "I wasn't," Whitney started. "Don't lie to me." Whitney went silent, staring out the window. But she was thinking about those 3 seconds. And so was Tupac. For 2 years, they never spoke, but they never stopped thinking about each other. March 1996. Quincy Jones sat in his private studio in Los Angeles, phone in hand. He just made 2 calls that would change music history, though neither person on the receiving end knew about the other yet. "Whitney, I have a project for you," Quincy said carefully. "Something real, something gospel-rooted, something that'll remind people who you really are." "I don't know, Quincy." Whitney's voice sounded tired through the phone. "Clive wants me doing pop, and Bobby doesn't like me working late nights. This is one night, just one, and nobody needs to know." Whitney hesitated, then, "Who else is on it?" "Trust me," Quincy said. He wasn't lying. He was just not telling the whole truth yet. The second call went differently. "Pac, you always say Whitney Houston has the realest voice in music. Here's your chance to prove you mean it." "She won't work with me," Tupac said flatly. "I'm too dangerous for her image." "Let me handle that. Can you write something real, something gospel, something that honors where she came from?" Tupac was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Yeah, I can do that." Quincy smiled. His assistant looked at him nervously. "Quincy, you're playing with fire. She's married to Bobby Brown. You know how he is." "I know," Quincy said, "but those two have something. Real chemistry. Maybe they need one night to feel alive again, even if it's just through music." But Quincy knew it might be more than just music. 11 p.m. Tupac arrived first, which was unusual. He was normally late to everything. He'd put on cologne, something he never did for studio sessions. He wore his best leather jacket. His hands were shaking slightly as he set up his notebook. The studio was dimly lit, intimate, candles flickering in the corners. Quincy's touch. The legendary producer knew how to set a mood. Tupac paced, sat down, stood up again, checked his reflection in the glass. He'd faced down gang members, survived shootings, stared down death row executives. But waiting for Whitney Houston? His palms were actually sweating. He kept checking the door, rehearsing what he'd say, then forgetting it all. Whitney arrived 20 minutes later. Her security dropped her off and left. Also unusual. She'd told them she didn't need them. She wasn't wearing the glamorous image everyone knew. Just jeans, a simple black t-shirt, and a hooded jacket. No makeup. Her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked like the girl from Newark, the girl who used to sing in her mother's church before the world got hold of her. When she walked into the studio and pulled off her hood, Tupac's breath caught. For one moment, he couldn't speak. "Wow," he said before he could stop himself. You're so beautiful like this." Whitney blushed. Actually blushed. Something she hadn't done in years. "Like what?" she asked. "Real." For a moment, they just looked at each other. Then Quincy cleared his throat. "All right, let me get the engineer set up. You two get comfortable." He left the room, closing the door behind him. Intentionally. The silence stretched. Whitney sat on the leather couch. Tupac remained standing, suddenly nervous. "I've wanted to talk to you," Whitney said quietly. "Since that night. MTV, 2 years ago." "Me too, but I thought—" Tupac trailed off. I know. I'm married. It's complicated. Everything about you is complicated, Tupac said, then immediately regretted it. Whitney's eyes flashed. What's that supposed to mean? I mean, you're the most talented woman in music, but you're playing it safe, singing songs that don't challenge you, married to a man who... He stopped. Who what? Whitney stood up, defensive but also strangely aroused by his honesty. Nobody talked to her like this. Everyone handled her with kid gloves. Nothing. It's not my business. Say it. Married to a man who doesn't deserve you. The words hung in the air like smoke. When Quincy came back with the engineer, he made a decision that would change everything. Both of you, in the booth. I want you singing this together, close. The vocal booth was small, intimate. When Whitney and Tupac stood at the microphone, their shoulders were almost touching. Quincy played the track, a gospel sample, His Eye is on the Sparrow, underneath hard-hitting drums. The contradiction between sacred and street was perfect. That's, Whitney's voice caught, that's the song from my church, from when I was a little girl. I know, Tupac said softly. That's the real you. That's what I wanted to honor. Whitney turned to look at him, and suddenly they were face to face, inches apart. She could smell his cologne. He could see the gold flecks in her brown eyes. Okay, Whitney, give me your verse. Quincy's voice came through the headphones. Whitney sang, and she didn't sing the radio-friendly, perfectly controlled Whitney Houston voice. She sang raw, gospel, church. The voice that Sissy Houston had trained in that Newark church when Whitney was just a little girl. Tears started falling as she sang about being trapped, about wearing masks, about losing herself. Her voice cracked on certain notes, something she'd never allow in a professional recording, but it made it real, authentic. Tupac watched her, mesmerized. He'd seen her perform 100 times on TV, but he'd never seen this. This was Whitney unfiltered. This was the woman behind the image, the girl from Newark who still believed in God and gospel and truth. When she finished, she turned, breathing heavily. Their faces were 6 inches apart. That was, Tupac whispered. Damn, Whitney. Your turn, she whispered back. They didn't move apart. Tupac began rapping, his eyes locked on hers. They put you in a cage, golden but locked. Gave you the world but your spirit's blocked. I see the fire you hide behind that smile. Whitney, I'd burn this industry down to see you wild. Whitney's tears came harder. Her chest was heaving. Not from the music, from something deeper, something she'd been suppressing for 2 years, since that hallway, since those 3 seconds. Pack, she whispered. He reached up, wiped a tear from her cheek with his thumb. His hand lingered on her face. She didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned into his touch, closing her eyes. Time stopped. His other hand came up, cradling her face. She opened her eyes, brown eyes meeting brown eyes, both seeing pain, both seeing longing, both seeing possibility. He leaned in. She didn't pull back. 1 inch apart, half an inch. Her hands gripped his shirt, his breath on her lips, her heart hammering so loud she thought he could hear it. Their lips were inches apart. That was perfect, Quincy's voice crackled through the intercom. Take 5. The moment shattered. They pulled apart, both breathing hard, both knowing they'd almost crossed a line. But the night was far from over. By 3 a.m., they'd been working for 4 hours. The song was coming together beautifully, but the tension between them had become almost unbearable. They sat on the studio couch during a break, exhausted. The engineer had stepped out for coffee. Quincy had gone home, trusting them to finish. They were alone. Can I ask you something? Whitney said quietly. Anything. That night at MTV, did you feel it too? Tupac turned to look at her. In the dim studio light, she looked young, vulnerable. Nothing like the superstar the world saw. Yeah, he said honestly. I felt it. I've been feeling it for 2 years. Then why didn't you? Because you're married. And because I knew if I got close to you, I wouldn't be able to walk away. Whitney's voice broke. Bobby hurts me, Pac. Not just physically. He's killing who I am. Clive won't let me sing what I want. I look at you and I see freedom, and it terrifies me. Tupac reached for her hand. You terrify me too. You know why? Why? Because you make me want things I can't have. A normal life, real love, peace. I'm not gonna live long, Whitney, I know that. But when I look at you, I wish I could. Whitney was crying now. We can't have this, can we? No, Tupac said softly, but we have tonight. He moved closer. His hand came up to hold her face. Whitney's hands rested on his chest. She could feel his heartbeat, fast like hers. If I kiss you, Whitney whispered, I won't be able to go back to him. Then don't kiss me, Tupac whispered back, but don't go back to him either. I'm not as brave as you. Yes, you are. You just forgot. For 10 seconds, they stayed like that, frozen, wanting, knowing they couldn't. Finally, Whitney pulled back. We should finish the song. Tupac nodded, releasing her. Yeah, the song. But they both knew the song wasn't enough. Back in the booth at 4 a.m., something had changed. All the tension, all the longing, all the pain, they poured it into the music. Tupac's revised verse became a love letter he couldn't send. If I could, I'd steal you away tonight. Take you somewhere nobody knows your name. Let you sing gospel under moonlight. No cameras, no pressure, no shame. But you got a ring and I got a death wish. This industry won't let us be. So I'll love you through this music, Whitney. That's the only place we're free. Whitney's response made the engineer cry. Under the mask I wear for the world is a woman who wishes she was your girl. But wishes don't change what's real. So I'll give you this song. It's all I can feel. When they sang the final chorus together, both were crying. The engineer was crying. Even Quincy, listening through the phone line from home, was crying. This wasn't just a song. This was confession, prayer, goodbye. The sun was coming up when they finally finished. Whitney checked her phone. 17 missed calls from Bobby. I have to go, she said, panic in her voice. Bobby thinks I'm at my mother's. If he finds out, when will I see you again? Tupac asked. Whitney started crying again. You won't. We can't. Tonight. It was everything. But it has to be the only time. Leave him, Whitney, please. I can't. You don't understand. He'll destroy me. He'll destroy my career. She couldn't finish. Tupac pulled her into a hug. It lasted too long. She buried her face in his chest. He rested his chin on the top of her head. I'll wait, he whispered into her hair. However long it takes, I'll wait for you. Whitney pulled back, looked up at him. Don't wait for me, Pac. I'm not worth it. You're worth everything. She kissed his cheek, soft, quick, heartbreaking. Then she grabbed her bag and left. Tupac stood there for 2 hours after she left, just staring at the door. The engineer finally asked, You okay, man? I just lost something I never had, Tupac said. The engineer had no response to that. After Tupac died 6 months later, September 13th, 1996, his mother found his journal. One entry was dated March 24th, 1996, one day after the session. I met the woman I could have loved, but she's not free, and I won't live long enough to wait. Some love stories don't have endings. They just have one perfect night. If there's a heaven, maybe we'll get it right there. When Whitney died, February 11th, 2012, her assistant found her diary in the hotel room. One entry stood out, written years earlier but read often. The pages were worn. March 24th, 1996. I met a man who saw me. Not the image, not the voice. Me. And I walked away because I'm a coward. Pac said he'd wait, but he died waiting, and I'll die regretting. The rumors started almost immediately after that session. Industry whispers. Whitney and Tupac, no way. But those who knew, knew. Bobby heard the rumors within days. The confrontation was ugly. He came home drunk, angry. Were you with that thug? He screamed. It was just a recording session. Whitney lied. You better be telling the truth. She was lying and thinking about Tupac every day. 20 years later, 2015, Quincy Jones held a press conference. The room was packed. I have something the world needs to hear, Quincy said, his voice emotional. Whitney Houston and Tupac Shakur recorded together in 1996. Nobody knew. The tape was locked in my vault. Both artists asked me to keep it secret. Now they're both gone. The world deserves to hear what they created." The room went silent. He pressed play. The music industry stopped. The song, titled Under the Mask, was unlike anything either artist had ever released. Raw gospel meets raw hip-hop, Whitney's church voice, Tupac's poetry, and underneath it all, longing. Music critics went wild. You can hear it in every note. This wasn't just a collaboration. This was a love letter they never sent. The engineer gave an interview in 2016. "People ask me, did they hook up? No, but only because they chose not to. The tension in that room, I've never felt anything like it. When she left, he just sat there, broken. That broke my heart," Quincy finally admitted. "I've produced thousands of songs. I've never seen two people have that kind of chemistry. Not before, not since. I created that session hoping they'd make great music. They made something greater. They made truth." The song went to #1 posthumously, the first time a duet between two deceased artists hit #1. Gospel rap became mainstream. Artists started crediting Under the Mask as their inspiration. Beyoncé said in 2018, "That song taught me that the most powerful art comes from what we can't have." Kendrick Lamar referenced it in his Grammy acceptance speech. "Whitney and Pac showed us vulnerability isn't weakness, it's power." Modern artists sample it constantly. Drake built an entire song around it about lost love, calling it the most honest 4 minutes in music history. Her covered it at the 2020 Grammys, dedicating it to the ones we walk away from. The performance had everyone in tears. Universities teach it in music history classes. This collaboration, one professor explains, represents the crossroads of R&B and hip-hop, gospel and street, love and industry. It's the song that proved genre boundaries are just illusions we create. Documentary filmmakers keep trying to get permission to tell the full story. Quincy Jones refuses every time. "Some stories are too sacred," he says. "The music tells you everything you need to know."